I can say wow, 100 times. Wow, wow, wow. We're zooming in on these clusters that are occurring north of Greenland in the trench there. We've seen some of the largest earthquakes on the planet, except the one in Japan, uh, happen here on a more frequent basis. Vanuatu is, Vanuatu is is really surrounded by incredible seismicity. The thing about this earthquake and the clusters that occur at two different points along this trench. Um, in North New Zealand, there is a supervolcano there, but this whole area is nothing but volcanism. And so, what we're seeing is a hybrid pattern where you have a line of quakes following a trench, but you also have clusters surrounding a central point, which which is more of a volcanic signature. So, you know, having volcanism destabilize your trench or your fault then would present with a hybrid kind of a pattern. Linear, overlapping, clustering, spherical clustering. So these quakes, very interesting, happened at the end of one alignment and the beginning of a second, involving Venus. And if you look at some of the 8 pointers in the past, if you go back to the orbital diagrams, you'll find there are points where Venus swings in at precisely the right time and accelerates a motion or a change in motion for planet Earth. And so we pull back out on this earthquake map. We see that area going, and we don't see any other areas of significant earthquake activity. Where if you're not looking at an alignment relationship, you're looking at usually the entire globe being affected to similar tectonic forces that are attributed to torque, gravity, magnetism, because those change the orbital path and the vibration, the amplitudes of wobble. Those the change in motion is a very very basic Newtonian physics. So we looked at another area that was clustering, and again, you're looking at highly volcanic regions. You're looking at the edge, what, of a basin. So if the tendency of your basins are to subside anyway due to gravity, what goes up must come down. The then as the oceans fill, you would expect them to subside the oceanic basins even more. But the dryland basins are subsiding as well. Some people are saying it's due to the removal of groundwater, which there is some relationship. It's just hard to quantify and attribute that what we're seeing. Now, let's take a more obvious force. If there was extra tidal influence in the solar system, and right now we're looking for big quakes, uh, and so I'm just kind of screen capturing how I search for quakes, and so I'm just looking here, but so we're looking for subsidence, and so what we're seeing, and I've said this a million times now, it sure seems like, but it's just basic Newtonian physics. When you have a basin subside, the part that receives the most stress is the transition zone where the valley floor meets the slope, the upward slope. And then, so those transition zones in subsiding basins then would see a lot of earthquake activity, because we're talking subsidence that's very, very deep. We're not talking just groundwater. We're talking deep magma wells, like core of the earth kind of stuff. So as I look around the earthquake map, I'm always seeing evidence of subsidence. And remember, yeah, I have to keep pointing out because um, people treat me like I'm a nobody sometimes. But we theorize that the entire Great Basin was a super mega caldera. It's probably connected to the Pacific Ocean, but the Pacific Ocean being the largest magma chamber on the planet. But if our dry land valleys are subsiding, then again we would see stress imparted along the rims. Because why? That's where the transition zone is. What we saw, as I showed you, in the South Pacific 8-pointer, was that we saw transition zones being where your largest occurrence was, and then we see the aftershocks filtering out and along the trench line. So, so what we do then, I'm looking at it right now at Long Valley Caldera. We see a slight uptick in activity, but not new activity. But this week it was pretty active, and as many, if not more, earthquakes than Yellowstone, which is the usual pattern. The Hawthorne quakes, they're settling down, not as much blue. So it looked like we were coming to an end of an alignment uh, by looking at our subsidence zones. Now, how does an alignment affect a subsidence zone? How does an alignment make your valleys subside? But it's if you gotta just stick to the real basics. Earth is traveling through the solar system. It's connected to a bunch of strings. Those strings get stronger and are elastic. They get weaker, and so that's the elasticity of magnetism and gravity. But the the overall amount of tidal forces that you influence or inflict upon another body will determine its motion through the solar system. So if you have an elastic string that becomes very strong for a 90-degree alignment, and then lets go after that alignment, falls off sharply, you can look at that as a rubber band letting go. So that's why at the end of alignments we see the greatest, usually, earthquake activity. But then when that alignment lets go in the rear, if another one grabs on at 90 degrees or in the other direction, away from that 90 degree, and accelerates that motion, then you're going to have even a greater change in direction. And Earth's changes in direction are minor, but we've had a lot of them because there's more gravitational influence and tidal forces inflicted upon Earth, as all the planets. So, so now we go to the edge of the Great Basin and we look. Well, if we're shaking the planet, if we're actually taking a pie, an apple pie, and you start shaking it and unshaking it and shaking it, what happens to the high point in your apple pie? What happens to it? It subsides. It succumbs to gravity. So I look at the increased seismicity along the fault zones as jiggling the pie. There are cracks in the crust. But I see the subsidence in the pie. At the time of the quakes, this was the position of the planets. And as you can see, our object should be out where we've been tracing it, and there should be a drift to it. It should be drifting to the left on this frame, actually, which would then explain a delay in the ending of the alignment. But an 8-pointer, nobody saw that coming. At least I didn't see it coming, and it affected just one region of the globe. But But notice there's Venus sneaking in. So right as that 90-degree alignment with planet X and the Sun, right as that came to an end, look what swung into alignment. At the exact same moment, here comes Venus. That's a pattern we've seen before with some of the 8-pointers. Venus swings in right at the last minute to accelerate the change in motion that happens at the end of the alignment when your greatest change is occurring. And there it is, pulling in the other direction, kind of like playing tug of war and letting go of the rope. Everybody on the other team falls down. Now imagine you had a guy go around and grab the belt loop or the belt of the anchor of the other team, helping you, tugging from the other side. Well, now when you let go of the rope, there's an acceleration in that motion of them falling down because you have somebody helping them to the ground. Does that make sense? End of one alignment. What we said, always the bigger quakes are going to come, but we started the alignment with 6-pointers, so you're not looking for to go from 6 to an 8-pointer at the end of an alignment. But having said that, there's also a third alignment. There's an alignment between Mercury, which is at its closest point to Earth, and Jupiter. It fell right into the alignment at the same time. So you've had really a lot of seismic forces interacting, but mainly acting upon Earth. So again, everything we're seeing as it plays out is still supporting our notion with 95% certainty where planet X is, what direction it's going, and even roughly its speed. And last but not least, there is a correlation sometimes to bow shock compressions and earthquakes. The day before the big quakes, we do see a significant compression almost down to geosynchronous orbit. It's hard to relate that a day before a compression event causing a day after earthquake. But there is a relationship. It's more than a casual relationship between atmospheric compression, magnetospheric compressions, and seismicity. We had all three going on. We had a 90-degree alignment, we had a Jupiter alignment, and then we had bow compression, and on that 90-degree alignment, we had Venus jumping in the game. So there was a lot of tidal forces shaking the apple pie. Until next time, be prepared, not scared.